Welcome to the Between the Pages podcast, brought to you by Boldly Seeking Ministries. Join the conversation every other Wednesday with the team and other special guests as we navigate how we can live a bold faith in between the valleys and the mountaintops of life. This episode is sponsored by Lakeview Covenant Church, where together they pursue Christ and advance his priorities across the street and around the world. Now, let's get to this week's conversation. Well, hey guys, welcome back to this week's conversation. And part of this episode in particular is talking about Elizabeth's blog that she wrote a couple months ago. And the title of it was, Would You Lead in Faith? And so, Elizabeth, do you just want to kind of explain a little bit of what your blog was? I know you kind of had a great experience this last summer, 2 summers ago.
2 summers ago now.
2 summers? Perfect. Yeah. So 2 summers ago, and just what prompted you to write the blog, and then we'll kind of dive in a little bit deeper as how does that apply into the concept of really this podcast, Between the Pages. Like, how do we live life boldly between the valleys and the mountaintops of life?
Yeah, so I went on a leadership camp in the Boundary Waters of northern Minnesota, and we had to write a Devo, and so I wrote that Devo, and it was about Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which was a great example of leaders back in Bible times. And then Rebecca came to me and said, hey, would you be a guest writer for my blog? I need a writer. And I said, well, sure. I actually have this Devo that I would love to write more in depth on. And so I wrote that, and I didn't realize how much it would tie in and how it would just like all come together. So I thought that was really good to take it from this in the middle of the woods writing a Devo to like, oh, it's on a website, and now I'm talking about it on a podcast. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Full circle.
Yes.
Full circle moment. I'm so proud of you. So part of the retreat experience that you went on was focusing on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about Daniel 3 and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their leadership of, not bowing down to the idol. For those of you who aren't familiar with Daniel 3, King Nebuchadnezzar built this gold statue and required everyone to bow down to the statue. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood up there and was like, you know what? Like, I can't do that because I serve one God and one God only, and I'm not going to bow down to false gods. And so he threw them in this fiery furnace, and they were untouched. They came out, and, I think in that moment, King Nebuchadnezzar, experienced the presence of God being like, they're in this 500-degree furnace, and you came out untouched. Like, who is this God? And I think that asking the question, would you lead in faith? Taking that of if you're leading in faith in a difficult situation, how do you think the perception of the other person in that situation will actually see Jesus more? And so I guess Jenny and Elizabeth, what maybe for you answering the question, would you lead in faith? What does that kind of mean to you?
Yeah, as I read the blog a couple months ago, I was thinking leading in faith is a lot of action, but it's also a lot of stuff you can't see either, because they didn't have to say too many words. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they led with their actions, but they also had a heart-to-heart with God, trusting in God above anything else, because they really had no other choice, because they just put their full heart in it. They had to make sure that they were on board with what God was saying and telling them to do, because it was their life on the line. So it can't just be actions or false words and just saying something, but leading by faith for them especially had to be a heart-to-heart thing too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for me, when I wrote this, I was still in high school, and so it was just thinking about that day-to-day of constantly seeing everyone else going down a different path and being oh, I go to church every Sunday, I lead in church, but these people don't see that. So to take it personally of just I'm not obviously put in a fiery furnace, but I'm having to try and share my faith and be different in this crowd of people who are worshiping idols, whatever they may be. So it's just to be able to attach it personally to my life was very interesting, I guess we'll say it that way.
Right. And we're in a society where I think there are a lot of idols. Our idols don't have to be this statue, but it can be the way that you interact with people? Like, are you idolizing fame? Are you idolizing popularity? Are you idolizing social media, or the way that you dress, the way that you look, the way people even think about you? And I think sometimes, especially for women, the biggest is like what other people are thinking of you. Like, I have to constantly remind myself every single day, like, it doesn't matter what people think of me. What matters is like what God thinks of me, and like how I think of myself as a daughter of the King. And that is something where even in situations, and I love this quote that you put in your blog, and it was talking about a song that you sang that following Sunday. And the quote was from the song, "There's a reason why our hearts can be courageous." And talking about how like we have the God of like angel armies like on our side fighting for us. So it is possible to go through hard things. You know, you always think like hard things are your valleys and the best things are your mountaintops. But I think there are so many things in everyday life that are hard, that can be difficult things to walk through, like whether it's just mental health, like depression, anxiety, like just being busy too. Being busy is so hard. Like sometimes I feel like I leave the house at 7 a.m. and I'm back at 8 p.m. and I have not had a chance to breathe or remind myself of like, I get to love Jesus. And I go throughout the day and it's like, whoa, wait. I got to take a step back and like enter a situation of like, how would I lead in faith in this situation? If I have a fight with a coworker, if I find myself just getting really like short with a guest or a client, like taking a step back and being like, okay, how do I lead in faith in this situation? I guess for the two of you, what is something for you looking at leading in faith that you can kind of take that question and apply it? And for those of you who are listening, like, how can you take would you lead in faith and that question that Elizabeth brings up and apply it to different areas of your life? Like, where is one place that you could lead in faith? Or what is maybe a situation that you know about or that you're walking through right now that you can, instead of leading in fear or leading in stress or anxiety, but rather to take the step of leading in faith? And for the two of you taking, like, what are your thoughts on that?
What I first thought of, like being a teacher and stuff, you always have to be aware of like what you're doing in school and what you're doing outside of school. And so if people see like, oh, she's afraid of something, or fear is really taking control of her life instead of faith, it like really is shown outside of school. Like in school or in church or wherever your setting is, you can kind of put on a front a little bit and be like, yeah, I'm a faithful person. I have Bible verses up on my office wall, or I, pray before I eat lunch or something. Like that's something that people see. But the stuff that is really important is the stuff that people don't see. Like, where do you lead in faith when people aren't around or when people aren't watching? So that's been something I've been working on a little bit too, is just how do I lead in faith even when no one else is around? Like, what does that look like? How can I further my faith more by praying and digging into the word, even when I'm super tired or like don't have time for it? It'll be like in the car ride or something, just making those little moments that lead your faith deeper and deeper in the Lord. And I thought of like the story of Noah a little bit too, how he like put his whole reputation on the line. People thought he was crazy building an ark when there wasn't any rain. And so thinking of examples from the Bible like that, or like the walls of Jericho, like they were going to walk around a wall and try to knock it down without even touching it. Like that's a huge step of faith. And I don't have to do anything like that in my world or in my life, but just keeping those examples in mind from the Bible stories. And that's a good example from Daniel too.
I love that. What you said of leading in faith when people aren't watching.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've come in contact with a couple people in my life where they talk a good talk. Like they have this whole list of things that they want to do, or the things that they're good at, or the things that they're involved with. And then all of a sudden you're like, but have you gone to church, or like have you been being intentional in your Bible time, or praying, or being in community with people? And then also, like, have you taken the time to like just prayerfully consider different areas of your life? And almost like polar opposites, like just really talking up this good talk, and you're like, oh my goodness, you're such an incredible person. But then you start to get to know them and you're like, wait a second, what you do kind of like in secret is not what you're doing out in public. And I almost think, well, and I do think that what happens in secret is way, way more important than what you're putting out to the rest of the world. Like, I mean, when Jesus tells, I can't remember the verse entirely, but he says, like, go into the upper room, go into your room, shut the door and pray. Like, he says, shut the door, like, go by yourself and go pray. Like, he did not say pray in front of 500 people, like, talk this big talk and people are going to love you for that. It's like, no, what's most important is you and me first. And leading in faith on our relationship before you go out and talk this big talk. I love that. I think that's something that I think anyone can kind of work on, and just being more intentional, like with your own relationship. What are you doing in secret by yourself to really invest in your relationship with Jesus? Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, kind of what Jenny was saying and what Rebecca was saying earlier about busyness is I will be here on a Sunday morning and I'll do the things, and then it's like I get so wrapped up in the busyness of the week, and so not almost like having split personalities of at church, like, oh, I have my life put together. I'm here. I'm on the worship team. I'm on the tech team. Like, I'm here bright and early on a Sunday morning. It's great. I love it. And then Monday morning, oh, I have class. I have this. I don't want to be up early. And, like, just taking, like, the same attitude I bring to church on a Sunday morning and, like, on the worship team or wherever I'm serving to, I have class. Like, I get to wake up. I get to, like Rebecca said, love Jesus. And I should be taking that into consideration more than I actually do, rather than just on a Sunday morning. So
that's huge. I like that you said it's like an attitude check where you really just have to like mentally prepare yourself for a hard day sometimes and like take God with you. Like, it's not your challenge to do it on your own and like all gung ho about it, but it's like, no, I've got Jesus on my side. I have an angel of armies backing me up. And I know it's going to be a difficult day if you have like meetings or like a big test or something, but remember to take God with you. And I think that helps lead in faith as well.
Yeah. It's, while you were talking, Elizabeth, it was reminding me of a podcast I did with Evan during COVID. And it was talking about how do you be in the world, but not of the world. And it's kind of like almost you're trying to combine like oil and water in a way, and they don't mix. Like, Christianity and the world don't mix. And the thing is because we are chasing after Jesus, but the devil has something to chase, and that's us. It doesn't end. It's like he is consistently chasing us while we are still chasing Jesus, because that's who we want to chase for. But he's chasing after us to be like, no, like, that's not the way to go. But it's like, we know that that's the way to go. So we're constantly in this battle of being in the world, but not of the world. Like, being of the world, like just consumed by busyness and be like, oh, I have to go to school. Oh, I have to go to work. Oh, I don't want to talk to this person who's calling me on my office phone right now. It's like, no, I can go and I can be a light and be like, answer the phone, be like, good morning. Like, how are you? And just be that bubbly personality and that loving person that Jesus has called each one of us to be, to love. And, you know, I think that's something too, is like, how do you lead in faith in a world that says otherwise? How do you lead in faith when we're trying to be in the world but not of the world and be consumed by the world? But we want to be consumed by Jesus. And I think that is definitely like what you were getting at, I think, a little bit in your blog that you wrote. You know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were like, we're in the world, but we're not of the world. We're not going to bow down to these idols, but we are chasing after Jesus no matter what happens. And, you know, Jesus is faithful. And like what happened in Daniel 3, they went into the fire furnace and they came out untouched. And who's to say that you can't go into some hard situation or go into your everyday life and know that, you know, we serve a God of possible. We serve a God who heals. We serve a God who loves. We serve a God who is continually fighting and chasing after us. Like, I mean, you can tell I'm a worship leader. Like, I'm using song lyrics, but like, he'll leave the 99 for the one. And knowing that, like, you can go into every day being like, I'm going to lead in faith because I serve a God of faith.
Well, even in the story, it says that the 3 men went in, and then Nebuchadnezzar saw 4 men in there. And I think that it implies that that's what turned Nebuchadnezzar, is that Jesus was in that fire with them. I mean, not him physically, but like he was with them in there. And Nebuchadnezzar saw that. And so it's just crazy in our lives, even though we don't necessarily see Jesus as a physical person next to us, he is there walking through that with us. It's not like he's just someone up there that we pray to. You know, it's like he is here with us through it all. So I think that's cool to think about.
That's good because, like King Nebuchadnezzar, say there's someone on the other side of the situation, they could see that second person or third person or fourth person in the situation, and that's Jesus. They'd be like, why is this situation different? It's because, like what you said, Jesus is with us and he's walking in those hard times with us.
And sometimes we feel that pressure like, oh, I have to be the one to show God's faith. And that's like a ton of pressure, like for other people to see what we're doing and to like call us out, hold us accountable. That's a lot of pressure to like hold throughout your whole week, every decision you make. And people are watching you because if you say you're a Christian, that has a bad reputation in our society. It's like, oh, Christians are hypocrites. But it's like we have to constantly fight against that stereotype. So just keeping in mind, like, God is in control and he's with you in that fire, in that, not persecution necessarily, but like those kind of fiery situations, that he's not going to let you stop and like just fall in the fire. He's not going to let you do that.
All comes down to fear. Sometimes we hold on to fear more than we hold on to hope. And I know for me, I think I am like the worst because I'm such a planner and a type A person where I want everything to go like my way. I'm like, it has to be like this, and this, and this is how I want my life to be from point A to point B. But then all of a sudden it's like one thing happens and I'm gripped to fear. I'm like, how is this going to pan out now? Like how is my goal gonna happen? And it's like, no, like God wants us to be like, sometimes I know what's best for you because I know you than you even know yourself. And so then to switch and hold on to hope, be like, I can hope in the God that I serve, that he knows what's better for me, and leading in faith with that. And it's hard for even newly college students there, Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Like I wrote that when I was in high school, but now going into college, things have changed, but it's still the same environment of school, and I don't know, just getting older and more challenges, not necessarily more in number, but different and new, and trying to figure out who I am, who I want to be. Everyone asks, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what's your major? And I'm like, just let me figure it out. Like, I just
general studies.
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to do all this, and then so yeah.
How do you think people who haven't grown up in the church, how can like they lead in faith if they're looking for a way to find that hope when society is dragging them down and the things they see on social media are so difficult and the news is so hard to watch, and they weren't Christians, they didn't grow up in a Christian household? How do you think, either one of you, that they can like find that lead in faith?
I think the biggest thing is community. Take that inventory check of your life. Who are the friends that are honestly always there for you? Who are the friends that show up when you're down? Because those are the people that then you can go to and ask, be like, what's different about you? And it opens up that conversation of, I get to have hope in these situations because of Jesus. And the best thing to ever hear from someone is like, I want that hope too. And so do that inventory check. What are the 3 or 5 friends that you feel like always, not necessarily act in like a positive way every single day, because not anyone can like be positive every single day. That's super draining. But who are those 3 to 5 friends that constantly show up for you, who are there for you, who support you and love you? And just have an honest conversation with them. Be like, hey, like, you're always there showing up. What is different about you? how do I get to that point? And most of the time they might say that they're a part of like a Bible study group or a church, or, they've had an experience with church to start that conversation. And they might not even be a Christian either, but at the same time, it opens up that dialogue. And I think that's the starting point, is having the dialogue.
Mm-hmm. And from like the other perspective of, if you know like a friend who is struggling in their faith, or they don't have a faith, I mean, there are so many opportunities. Like, hey, come to Bible study with me. Come to church on a Sunday morning. Like, we have a great lunch after church. We have that going on. Like, come get a free lunch and just see what you think of it. I mean, there's so many opportunities where I feel like people are just like, well, they don't believe in God, so why would I keep trying? I mean, keep trying, because you never know. If they say no 10 times, that 11th time, they might say, well, sure, I have nothing going on Sunday morning. I'll come check it out, and who knows where it could lead. So,
also good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been trying to grow my taste in worship music a little bit more too. I feel like I just kind of stick to one genre or one artist, and then it's like, oh, I'm tired of this person now because I've listened to it 40 times in a row. So I've been trying to look at different suggestions of worship music and contemporary Christian music and stuff too. So I feel like that's something that anybody can do. You can YouTube things and look on Pandora or Spotify too, and just maybe that's a way that really touches your heart, or you hear a lyric that you didn't think of before that you're like, oh, that's how I could grow my faith today, is following those lyrics or those worship songs. Yeah.
That's so good. I guess any final thoughts or words of encouragement, challenges, takeaways from just our conversation over the last 20 or so minutes, for those who are listening, maybe something that they can take away with and just ponder on for the next week?
I'll go first, I guess. I would say just try to think of one way that you could either text somebody this week or say, hey, how's it going? Here's a Bible verse. I was just thinking about you. Here's a little blurb of encouragement. I feel like that can go a long way, more than we even realize, if our friend is struggling, and sometimes our friends don't tell us when they're struggling, and just sending them a little text or something that says I was thinking about you, or buy them a Starbucks card or some sort of coffee or something, just to uplift them a little bit and give them that nudge of encouragement. So that's my one point, I think, this week, is lead in faith by your actions, and give someone a text this week.
For me, I'd say just look inwards too. Remember those little actions that could show a difference to someone. I mean, whether it be your attitude or just taking a moment for yourself to remember that Jesus loves you, you love Jesus, and remembering that before you go and lash at someone or have this attitude of, oh, I have to do this today. Be oh, I have to do this today, but I also have this today. So just remembering the positives and looking inward before putting it out there.
That's so good. I would say, kind of like I said before, is do that inventory check of your life of, would you lead in faith? Find those 3 to 5 friends that are close to you. Talk to them. Have another conversation of, hey, how can we as a group of friends lead in faith this week, and challenge each other. And I think it's so important each week as we kind of dive more into these kind of topics of accountability. And just challenging each other. I think that's how you push people. But also the second thing I would say is take the time by yourself to be in the upper room and in the secret place with the Lord. Have that heart check. Make sure that you are right with Jesus first before you go out and you shine your light for Jesus. Because here's the thing, and we'll get to this in later episodes of this idea of if the light that is on you is brighter than the light that is within you, the light that is on you will destroy you. And we'll dive into that here in a couple weeks or so. But I think that's so important, is make sure that you have the right intentions, and then to go out and share the love of Jesus. So good, so good. Well, thanks, friends, for joining us this week. We're so excited to just continue having these conversations. Make sure to head over to our Instagram at Boldly Seeking, Facebook, boldlyseeking.online for our website. We're going to continue the conversation via our social media platforms, TikTok, anything like that. If you're a part of our exclusive team, we'll be sending you an email with kind of just an overview of the episode. We'll give you a link to the episode to then share with your friends. And we're so excited to do life with you and live life between the pages with you. So thank you so much.